In this video, I'm going to tell you how you can co-create your game world with your players. This takes a lot of pressure away from you as the Dungeon Master and lets your players engage more with the world. I'm Razumazo and I'll be your Game Master for today. Have you ever been in a situation where you spend hours creating deep lore for your game world only to have your players don't care? So all of your hard work never gets used? Or have you had difficulty coming up with something that could really make your world stand out? Or maybe just had trouble coming up with great names for the countries in your world? Well, I'm here to help. And that is what I do here on this channel. I share my experience from 30 years of game mastering with you. So if you enjoy this video and would like to see more content like this, don't forget to like and subscribe. So how do you make your world better and your job as a world creator easier? The trick I have used for many years is to co-create the world with my players. But what does that mean? The problem with creating your own world is that you might think it is awesome, but the player characters will usually only be interested in what is happening here and now. So you might come up with a great backstory for all the countries or races in your world, but the players will be focusing on solving the immediate problems they have, problems that are set out by you in the adventure you're playing. This means that you will have to make all your lore relevant for the specific adventure, because unlike published campaign settings, you can't expect your players to sit down and read a lot of backstory. And even though you can create an epic campaign where an ancient evil who roamed your world in ancient times is about to come back, you can't have a scholar following the player characters around 24/7. So that means you not only wasted a lot of your time coming up with a world that your players won't be interested in anyway, you also have to do extra work to reveal your world in every session you have. But there is an easier way. Co-creation means that you come up with a framework for your world. You put in a little unspecified content, and then you agree with the players that you will fill out the world as you go along. This means that if your players have good ideas about what should be in the world, you agree to put it in the world. Say a player comes up with a backstory for their character, and in it he has done something. He started a fire which caused a large city to burn down, and now he's on the run. And the player comes up with some NPC names and descriptions and a city name. Now this place and these NPCs exist in the world. And if you ever mention them in your game, I promise you that this particular player will listen very carefully and be interested. As the game master, you can flesh out the ideas the player had without them knowing. But basing it off something the player came up with will guarantee their interest in learning more about it when they encounter it in the game. But it also goes the other way. Imagine you have an idea for a cool city, but you want to make sure the players find it interesting. So instead of just creating something you think is cool, you can ask them before or after your sessions about what they would think was cool to have in the city you're imagining. You don't need to spoil anything, and you are not forced into taking the idea they come up with. But if you take one of their ideas and make it fit into your own theme, your players will think it is pretty cool when they encounter whatever thing they came up with. One thing you should remember is that you are the one who creates the framework for the co-creation. So when the game begins, you should put in some places and some lore in the game which the players can build from. I suggest you put in some cities. You can explain the main story of your different races and the most recent history. You don't need much more than that, but of course you can add as much as you'd like. Just remember that overdoing it can lead to wasted work. So that is the essence of co-creating your game world, but wait, there's more. Co-creation becomes a very strong tool when you start using it during the actual game session. I can best describe this with an example. Imagine that the player characters are trying to persuade their way past some guards, and one of them mentions that he used to be an officer for the Blood Baron Karloff up north. This is the first time anyone at the table has heard anything about the Blood Baron. But the moment the player talks about him, you, the game master, can decide that the Blood Baron actually exists. Then and there you can have the guards know about the Blood Baron and add more information to him through their responses. Or maybe in a future session you can suddenly have the Blood Baron show up. The players will remember that it was actually them who came up with this NPC and feel more part of the game world. This can go with everything the players talk about. Villages the characters have traveled through during their lifetimes, magical items they've seen, important events, important people they've heard of. The list is endless. Doing this will help your world feel more real for you and for the players at your table. Actually, if you want to see this in action, you can come watch me Game Master over on Twitch by clicking this link here. Time for a disclaimer. Doing co-creation puts a lot of responsibility into the hands of your players, so remember to talk about this before you do it in the game. And remember that as the Game Master you can always overrule whatever the players come up with. You can do this by either just saying no, or you can go with the flow and just change the ideas the players come up with to match your game. So for example, it could turn out that the Blood Baron was actually killed a year ago, or maybe in fact he's a 5-year-old with a very mean temper but a very kind family. The possibilities are endless. Okay, I know co-creation is not for everyone, and I know that it can be difficult to manage. I know that a lot of game masters really like doing lots of world building and coming up with obscure details just for their own benefit, and that is perfectly fair. I also know that some players prefer just having an entire world unraveling before them session after session, and if you're one of those game masters, feel free to keep doing what you're doing. But maybe one day try and add just a little co-creation and see how your players react. You might be surprised. And with that, our time together comes to an end. If you want to see more videos like this, remember to hit the like, the subscribe and the bell button to be notified when new videos are up. Until next time, this is Razumazu signing off.